This podcast is sponsored by Terraform Development proudly supports the Hopi tribe and nonprofit Hopi entities to provide essential technical support in engineering, architectural, and project management services. Eddie Tewa can relate to the hard work on the Hopi reservation, including the cornfield duties and traditional ceremonies that he was raised on. He values this tradition, so Terraform Development was formed to meet these needs on the Hopi reservation. Contact Terraform Development at TERRA4ORM.com and follow them on Instagram at Terraform Development.
Also sponsored by...
Hey, Tom here with Hopi Relief. Hopi Relief is a nonprofit organization based down here in the Valley where we are providing much-needed supplies to the Hopi Reservation during this COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. Please visit hopirelief.org and find out how you can get involved. Hopi Relief is also an Arizona-recognized charitable tax organization. And please, visit us December 1st on Giving Tuesday. Thank you.
You are now listening to the Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. I'm your host, the godfather of podcasting, J-Man. And with me is the poster boy for Disney soaps, Carl.
The Godfather. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for listening to Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. So what is with the Godfather thing?
I am the godfather of Hopi podcasting. And if you don't know why I am the godfather, go check out our latest episode of Us Be These Guys on our YouTube channel.
And I actually proved you wrong, so...
And you actually didn't prove me wrong because, you know, when I tell the history of Hopi podcasting, there's no Carl to be found.
Cancel culture is probably going to come after you, so.
No, I think cancel culture supports me in this one.
Well, thank you for listening and happy Wednesday, everybody. And, you know, it's been a rough ride here on the Hopi Reservation.
Happy Wednesday to everybody. We deemed ourselves essential employees because we're breaking the lockdown rules to bring this episode to you all.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's interesting because our last episode, we talked about Hopi small businesses and through our Instagram, we did a shout out to all the small businesses out there. Man, there's tons of small businesses
and all
out
the
there
bootleggers came out.
Yeah. All the bootleggers were trying to plug their names in there and like, you know, go check out Larry at
this is Palaka. Jojo from Bakavi, you know. I sell the good stuff.
I got the good. I don't dilute that.
I don't water
that vodka too much.
I don't water it down too much.
but yeah, it was really interesting to see, you know, how many small businesses are out there. And, you know, I think through our Anchor app, because we mentioned this before, that there's this little tool that measures how many unique downloads that we have, basically new listeners to the podcast. And that number has been pretty big for quite a while.
It's been huge. I mean, the unique listeners out there are in the hundreds right now, and we thank you all for supporting and listening to us. And I know that you want more content, and you know it does take a little bit of time to do all of this stuff here. And since we do full-time jobs, you know, just be patient. We're doing our best.
And so if you're listening to the first time, we welcome you to the podcast. And if, you know, we would like to welcome you all on this ride and this journey to the world of Hopi and indigenous occurrences and happenings.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So today's topic, what is today's topic?
Today's topic is the Indian Market Tour.
Indian Market Tour.
And so, you know, I think that in a way that this episode is kind of piggyback off of the last episode, because in the last episode, we were talking about small businesses and the fact that a lot of small businesses are run by artists.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so, you know, talking about this world of art within Indian country, within Hopi country, what kind of art mediums are primarily Hopis involved with?
I mean, there are a lot of mediums like painting, you have freehand drawing, you have now digital art. And you have carvings, you have, jewelry is one of the biggest ones here on the Hopi Reservation. Pottery, of course, yes. And, you have basketry, you have textiles. There's a huge range of mediums here on the reservation.
And I think that I guess really a reason why we decided to, kind of talk about Indian markets in general is that because, as in the world of, I guess, Indian country, but primarily specifically for Hopi, that, Indian markets, some of the ones that they have, some of the more famous ones that are here in the Southwest usually are a part of your yearly schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Whether you're an artist or not.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, like the Hopi calendar coincides with all of the markets that are being displayed. So,
and so the fact that some of those markets are during the springtime, you kind of know which artists aren't going to be at the dances.
Oh yeah,
depending on whenever the Herd Museum when their big Indian market falls in March, or if like the big Indian market that they have in New Mexico in Santa Fe,
yep.
kind of dictates when some of those summer dances are going to be to some degree.
And it does kind of take away from people's tradition, I guess you could say, here on the reservation to do all of these, to make money and to make ends meet with their arts and crafts.
Definitely. And the fact that I think that Indian country in general, we express ourselves through art, not just Hopis, but other tribes, the other tribes too also delve in, some of the mediums.
Yeah.
Some of the mediums that you mentioned. But I think particularly, especially for Hopis, very artistic community, correct?
Yes, we are. I mean, if you talk to any Hopi out here on the reservation, I mean, they'll tell you the history of like Hopi art, and they'll even try to sell you some stuff as well too.
And I think the fact that Hopis are such good artists is probably a reason why that Hopi in general gets a lot of attention.
Oh yeah,
from non-Hopis, primarily Bahanas,
yep.
or art collectors, people that delve into that sort of thing. Because then you mentioned some of the carvings, right?
Oh yeah,
and that's probably one of the most popular mediums that people participate in out here. Especially the fact that carving is, in a way, a traditional form that we use during ceremony.
Oh yeah, and the traditional doll carving, it goes centuries back, to where it was gifts from the gods here, and it was something that it was meant to be played with and cherished for years on years.
It was a tool of education.
It was a tool of education
for young children, primarily the little girls.
Yes,
and I guess educating them to the gods, like you've mentioned.
Yeah.
And so, but then, I think that art of carving really has, in a way, evolved.
Oh, yeah.
Because now you look at some of the carvers and, especially the ones that are, I guess you could label the best carvers.
Yeah.
That, that the intricacies and the way that they carve now and, some of the designs that they carve is a lot different than from what those real traditional carvings look like now, right?
Exactly. And it's with that comes with like the money that flows in, and it's that Hopi is sustaining themselves with that. So like, Kwa, he was actually a doll carver. Okay. So back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, I mean, he created a lot of dolls to sell, and he actually bought his first trailer with that, a trailer house.
Oh, with his doll money?
With the doll money.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that supported his kids. He even bought a car with it. Back in the 70s, cars were like $2,
But, you are kind of right, though. I think that, money does really, I guess, it pushes the artists in the way that they create their art.
Oh yeah,
because the more intricate, the more polished, the finer the art piece, essentially, the more money you can get for that art piece.
Oh, yeah.
And so, it really does push artists to be on top of their game, to really think beyond of just what our traditional forms of creating kachina dolls, or some of our traditional older forms of what jewelry looked like, or even, delving into new types of mediums that we've talked about that involve Hopi culture.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And there are a lot of traditional, or there are a lot of art and artists that are creating new pieces. And with that comes with a lot of controversy and a lot of backlash to that as well, too, because of traditional art versus traditional art, like doll carving, or like little craft making, bows and arrows, rattles.
Mm-hmm.
And, those are the traditional types of Hopi art.
Mm-hmm.
But when you actually go into like digital art, or like plastering your, a god on a
bath mat,
or like on a blanket or pillow, then it breaks that tradition there, and then it creates that controversy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think that's definitely true. But the fact that we have so many artists out here, I think that's kind of where it drives a lot of us to these Indian markets.
Oh, yeah.
Because then, for those that aren't familiar, and I think there really is kind of, when you think about it, you think about an Indian market. We've mentioned a few, one that's hosted by the Herd Museum in March, which is a very popular one. And then the other one, I think, is probably the larger one. It's called SWAIA. I don't know what SWAIA stands for, but it's like SWAIA, and that's held in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Traditionally, I believe in August.
Yeah. I think, August and then October, I believe, too.
Something
like that in the
like
fall.
That.
Yeah, it's in the fall, And I never go to these art markets because I don't like people, so.
and then I did mention in our YouTube video that I am probably the most unartistic Hopi that you'd ever meet. So, I don't delve in any of these artistic mediums that we discussed. But I think that, like with the Indian markets, you think about the Herd, you think about SWAIA. But there are other smaller markets, right? Like there's I think that there's a difference between these large Indian markets, and then something like Tuvi that happens in October, that coincides with the Navajo Western Fair.
Yeah.
And so, I think that, some of the differences in between something like a Tuvi or something like a SWAIA is that, the Tuvis, I guess, are kind of for people like us, right?
Yeah.
Because you can go to a Tuvi and, make the salaries that you and I make, or, some of our, I guess, less economically up the ladder people, we can go there and we can buy a $40 pair of earrings, or we can go there and we can buy, some of the art pieces that are available for sale
from local artists. Yeah.
But then when you go to a SWAIA, that's when, the cheapest thing on anybody's table is probably $500.
Yeah, that's true. And, those are mainly meant for people like collectors, or people who are really interested in art like that.
And so when you think about those SWAIAs or those Herd events, really the only thing that people like us can afford is the fry bread.
I can't even afford to walk through one of those booths there.
And I guess in a way it really, if you're an artist and if you participate in both those types of different markets, because they really are two different types of markets.
Yeah.
And we forgot to mention at the beginning that we do have a special guest.
Oh yeah.
And our special guest is somebody that is on that upper tier of the art scene. And, she can tell us, I guess what the artist mentality are in terms of, which markets that they prefer to prepare for, or if they choose to be involved with both markets, and what the differences are in preparing for something like a Tuvi or preparing for something like a SWAIA. Because then, that is something that really does come to mind, because then when you go to those smaller places, like the Tuvis, that you really walk around, and then you understanding going to something like a Tuvi that that I might buy something.
Oh, yeah. And
because I can afford whatever's being sold there.
And, there are artists out there that do prepare months in advance for the, the Indian markets, the bigger Indian markets like SWAIA. And it takes them months to create art And you don't know how hard it is to do something like that. And to have that price at a price that they're asking for, it just seems like it's ridiculous. But in actuality, it's because of the time and the effort that it's put into all of the art that's being made.
Definitely. And I think that, as well, I guess coming from a perspective of somebody like myself.
Yeah.
And like I said, preparing to go to a Tuvi, understanding that, I got to have some cash on me.
Oh, yeah.
Because, some of these people don't take the card, but knowing that I can afford something.
Yeah.
And then when I go to a SWAIA, I'm walking there kind of, I guess, a little bit more free, understanding that I probably won't be able to afford anything here. And then the fact that I have two younger kids, I'm already telling them ahead of time, don't you dare touch anything at any of these artist booths, because if you break something, I can't afford to pay for it.
Exactly. And, it's weird because I was at the Phoenix Indian Market, about 2 years ago, and I was walking through one of the booths there, and I saw a bunch of Hopis that do a lot of stuff, and they're basically our village friends, and we're talking and conversating, and they immediately, when they see like a Bahana or somebody interested in their art, they forget about you. They're like, you don't matter anymore. They're like trying to sell their pieces. Of like, bro, you're not gonna buy my piece. Just shut up. I'm gonna go talk to this guy over here.
Well, I guess, with that being said, I think now's a good time to bring on our...
Before we do, let's go ahead and take a quick break for our sponsor here.
Strong Ones. Every Strong Ones design has a story and a unique meaning. They create designs to celebrate traditions of running and uplift Native cultures across the globe. They also partner with local artists on special projects in hopes to expose talent and creativity of Hopi people. Strong Ones are often referred to as Hohongvit in the Hopi language. They can be found at hohongvit.com. That's HOHONGVIT.com. And we're back. And so right now we'd like to welcome our special guest, well-known potter, Karen Abeita.
Yes, I'm here.
Karen, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We greatly appreciate that you would take some time out of your day. And, like the fact that Carl said that, it does take a lot of time with the type of work that you do into the trade that you have with the pottery. So if you can go ahead and introduce yourself to our guests.
Okay, I just had to crack up at you, though, when you said, don't you dare touch that, because from the years I've been doing Indian Market, my daughter is now 24 years old, and she was raised at Indian Market, and she knew those words, don't you dare touch anything. Okay, my name is Karen Abeita. I am from Tewa Village. I am half Isleta Pueblo and half Tewa. I have resided in Palaka all my life. I have 3 siblings. I never knew I could do pottery until I lost my mother in 1984. And at that time, I was living in Lawrence, Kansas. And when she passed away, I had to come back home to take care of things because I was the eldest daughter. And at that time, my grandma, my SWAIA, had told me, you can go ahead and go back to where you were working and I'll take care of these too. But I was like, I can't do that to you, SWAIA. You've taken care of all of us. I'll give up what I had in the white man's world, and I'm going to come home and let's get things going out here. And I was really miserable, giving up. Well, first of all, let me go back. Before I even became a potter, I went to school to be an optician. So I do have an optician's license where I'm certified to work with an eye doctor.
Oh, wow.
So when I was up in Lawrence, I was managing an optical shop. So that's what I left behind and moved back to the reservation. And I was so miserable, no money coming in. I now had a house. I had a 18-year-old sister and a 19-year-old brother. And I just couldn't leave them behind. And I had to figure out how we were going to pay for these things. So unfortunately, and I'm very happy I've had her from the time we were in elementary school, was my friend Fawn Navasi. And she's the one that told me, you know what, Karen, you should come to my house and I'll teach you about potting. She said, you've been around it all your life. And when you were growing up, you were around your SWAIAs. So I went down there, and of course, Fawn was this big, popular, famous artist and the wife of James Nampeo, and she would mold these huge pots. I would sit there and watch her, and she kind of, went through the process of coiling the pots, how you do the coil method. And one thing she told me, and I never forget, and that's what I start out my day with, is a prayer, because she always says, don't forget to thank the clay. And from there, I started, and it was a lot of trial and error. Pots that I made that would just burst because I didn't catch an air pocket. And once I got going, though, my grandma, my SWAIA, she was still alive then, and she was like in her 90s, but she watched me, become this potter. And one day she told me, if you could come up here to the mesa, I want to give you something. So I was all excited. So I drove up there, and she handed me her painting stone and the rocks that were her mother's.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is generation to generation hand downs, and I'm the next one in charge. And to be honest with you guys, I take care of my painting stone. So, and like I said, I did a lot of trial and error. And another thing she gave me was this big bucket of paint that she had already made. And when it comes springtime, you've got to get out there and look for, what do the Hopis call it? We call it, and it's the mustard seed plant. I don't know the word for it in Hopi.
Do you know what it is, Carl?
Ishe. It's that's a mustard seed plant. Ishe.
Yeah, with the yellow flower.
Yeah.
And you have to watch for it in the spring, I was told. And with my grandma giving me all that paint, you guys, to be honest, I've never had to make paint.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. So like, Karen, when you first started creating pottery, did you learn from like the best, and you learn from just watching? And so like, do you know, or do you understand like from Bahana traditional pottery versus Hopi traditional pottery?
Yeah, it's really noticeable. You can tell.
Oh, okay.
And that was another thing Fawn had really instilled in my mind was, don't take any shortcuts. There's no shortcuts to Hopi pottery. The only tools you have to make your pottery are your two hands and a piece of gourd. That's it. We don't use a wheel. I myself have never seen a wheel in my life.
Oh wow, that's some great that's a great story.
Yeah, and I know because I watched Ghost. Remember with Patrick Swayze?
I think that's how Carl tried to make pottery.
You know how we are. We ladies are from the reds. We'd be all pissed off at our other significant other, like, get the hell away from me, I'm doing something. Don't even stand behind me.
That's my understanding of how pottery is really made. So
I was going to say that's probably how some pottery gets broken. I think that what you're saying I think is something that a lot of people like myself don't take into consideration, like how much care that it takes into creating something. Especially you mentioned heavily that the tools, making sure that you're taking care of your tools and the different types of items. And I really think that that's probably why I'm not an artist myself, is because I really don't have the patience.
You don't have the tools. That's why. You know what tools to use. So
in reality, though, all Hopi people are artists, because we all do something pertaining to art, whether or not it's in school or in traditional ways preparing for things. We all have to have that patience to do things.
That is
so I
true.
always say that all Hopi people are artists.
So
thank you for that, Karen.
J-Man must not be Hopi, so
Carl can shut up now and tell the rest famous wife out there, hey, I am artistic. You did marry an artistic guy. But Karen, can you talk a little bit about, because I think that in the introduction we kind of talked heavily about Indian markets, and we kind of mentioned too. But in your experience, what are some of those in Indian markets that you normally participate at?
I've been a participant of Indian market for 26 years now.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Okay.
And Herd Museum is probably 24. Santa Fe Indian Market is huge. And I was cracking up at you guys because SWAIA stands for Southwest Association of Indian Arts.
And that's why you're the expert, Karen. And we're just two guys that talk out of our asses most of the time.
So tell me, like, how long does it take for you to prepare for one of these shows here?
Well, actually, let me go back. For someone to get into Santa Fe Indian Market is really hard because you go through a screening process.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Uh-huh. And I was kind of hesitant the first, and I didn't look at myself as being good enough to go to Indian Market.
Yeah.
But I had submitted my application, and really crazy, you kind of sit there waiting. I wonder if I got accepted. And myself not even knowing how to prepare for this big show, I got that call and they said, Karen, you know what? We're going to bring you in as an upcoming new artist.
Oh, wow.
SWAIA. So I'm like, oh my God, the first year I tried, I got in. So I had no clue on what Indian Market was. So I just kind of took advice from people that went, like Rondina Huma, who won the big prize several years back. And she was telling me, you know what? You need to get to your booth. Make sure you take your own table and chairs. Get to your booth by 5 o'clock. She said, if you have something that you won in the show, there's going to be people standing at your booth, and sometimes they're there all night.
Oh, wow.
Waiting
Really?
to get
Wow.
that piece. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even imagine that. The first year I went, it was kind of like I was lost.
Yeah.
Because like you guys mentioned, all these big named artists. And there I am, this little girl from Tewa Village trying to compete with them.
Mm-hmm.
And the first year, I don't even think I won anything. I was just happy to sell my pots. And the other thing you got to take into consideration when it comes time for Santa Fe Indian Market, everything in Santa Fe triples in price.
Oh,
Really?
Wow, no kidding.
So
Wow.
you're thinking about food. Even Motel 6 will be in the $100 range
Ooh.
So
for a night.
So then it ends up costing you a lot just to attend those markets, huh, Karen?
Yeah, well, in your mind, I often tell myself, okay, Karen, it's going to cost you about $1,000 to spend your weekend in Santa Fe. So once you make $1,000 from whatever you sell, after that becomes your profit.
Wow. I didn't even consider that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, taking in consideration, I know that SWAIA has been canceled last year, and I don't know about this year.
It's virtual.
It's virtual. And so, taking into consideration, I wonder if my finger paintings are going to double in price if I go through the screening process. So, I'm very, very hopeful, and I know that I can pull through this.
I think that we all know that So'o's the only buyer in that market, Carl.
She loves my art.
And I guess kind of piggybacking off of Carl's comment, Karen, the fact that, COVID has shut down a lot of things. And I think that a lot of artists do primarily depend on these big Indian markets for their annual income. Can you describe what that's been like? And I guess either from your experience or maybe other artists that what the impact of COVID has been on your wallets?
It has pretty much devastated all the Native artists because you look at, I only attend 2 shows in the United States. One is the Herd Museum and one is the Santa Fe Indian Market. And with COVID coming around, that took away about 60% of my annual income.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Wow.
That does.
That's very high.
Yeah, that does it is devastating. And I know that a lot of artists out there are actually frustrated with that as well, too, and going through the same thing as what you're going through.
It's really hard, but I try not to think about it, because like I said, from the time I wake up, tips that I learned from my grandma, she always told me, don't paint in dark. Don't paint when it gets dark. You use that natural sunlight. So I'm up at 4 o'clock and I'm already getting ready to sit down to my painting stone from the time I can see the light coming right over the mesa. because I don't want to waste sunlight.
Oh, wow. So,
and I'll sit there and paint all day.
Oh, wow.
And I'm really fortunate that my husband, he works all day and comes home. And when he knows I'm getting ready for Santa Fe Indian Market or the Herd Museum, he'll tell me, go ahead and keep working, Karen. I'll go ahead and fix supper. I'll do breakfast. And I'm like, woo,
Oh, wow.
this is the way it should be done. So he's always there, you know, to help me out. I put him through hell when it's time preparing to pack, you know, because we've got to take tables and chairs, and there he is handling boxes of pottery going, and you know, it's just like, and I don't pack for myself because I leave everything behind.
Mm-hmm.
I let him do it.
Oh, wow. So Karen, we did this episode at the beginning of the season kind of asking this question, are Native men romantic? And so, you know, I would say that, you know, your husband is showing romance by helping you out in the way that he has.
Oh, I have myself a wonderful husband. We've been married for 31 years.
Awesome. Beautiful.
That's how old I am.
Carl is
I
not
met
that
him.
old.
I was a big softball player, and I met him playing softball. And we have a lot in common. We both work in the wildland fire world, which is my other part of my job.
Oh,
So
wow.
right now, what's happening is I'm trying to get my pots done for Herd Museum, and I've got a list of people that have been waiting for pots. And I'm trying to get all this done before fire season starts, because last year I do work on an incident management team. And it's the big type 1 team. So we're gone all the time in the summer. And last summer I did not get to touch my pottery. I started one in April and I just finished it last month because fire season ran from March, and I was still out in November in Colorado.
No kidding. So that's a huge balancing act.
Yeah, exactly. And so who was, you know, like there are different artists that sell to different countries like Japan, Russia.
Yeah.
And so like, does your pottery travel
internationally?
Internationally?
You know, I'm not really sure of that. When you guys were talking about collectors and people, you know, I do have some major collectors that will come by my booth.
Yeah.
And like in Santa Fe, that always cracks me up, man, because Daryl and I get there early and we have our little parking space and we get our coffee and we kind of go through the day on what we're going to do there in Santa Fe. And then I look at the booth and there's people standing there and he's like, check it out. Somebody's at your booth. I'm like, no way, only the big artists do that. and sure enough, you know, I didn't go last year because of COVID, but the year before, Indian Market started at 7:00. You guys, I sold all my pots by 7:30.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Because I had won the Helen Naha Award. It's a memorial award, and it is for the best of Hopi pots. And I personally, I do not care about best of category or best of show or best of division. I always sought out winning the Helen Naha Memorial Award.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, okay.
That's
I've won it twice.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
And
I've also gotten the Santa Fe, the Indian Market Fellowship, you know, and I always doubt myself. I don't know why, but I've got to quit doing that.
Yeah, all those awards should, you know, put some encouragement and positivity into your mind. But Karen, can you, I guess, kind of describe, you know, because we talked a little bit about it and you kind of mentioned it to kind of the buyers, who the buyers are of some of these big art pieces, especially at a place like SWAIA, because I think for people out here, I think that, you know, for a lot of us, you know, the fact that we are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And so the thought of, you know, buying a pottery or, you know, some type of art piece for thousands of dollars is just way outside the scope of our thinking.
Yeah.
So can you describe what these buyers are, how deep the pockets are?
Because I'm ready to sell my house for a pottery.
A lot of the buyers are people that are curators in museums.
Uh-huh.
People that have been collecting Indian art for decades.
Wow.
Dang, it's just, I'm trying to look back and pull out some people who are. I'll give you a story about a collector. It was about maybe 4 years ago. It was about 11 o'clock. No, I take that back. It was almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had, for some reason, I ended up with a lot of pots at Indian Market. And I was sitting there, and this Oriental lady that I know, she's coming. She goes, "Did Gregory come yet?" And I go, "No." She goes, "Well, it's 3 o'clock, and he said he was going to be here." And I go, "No, he didn't show up." And then I could hear him. Indian Market, you look up, there's just thousands and thousands of people going by. You lose track.
Mm-hmm.
And I could hear him, "Karen, hey, it's Gregory, I'm here." And I go, "Hey, Gregory, what's up?" And he goes, "Wrap them all up for me."
Oh.
And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Wrap up all your pottery for me. I want to buy them." And I'm like, "No way, you're crazy." And he goes, "I'm serious." And his wife, Angie, she's like, "Karen, he waited until 3 o'clock. He gave the people from 7 to 3 to buy your work. He gave them a chance today."
Wow. That's so crazy.
And I know. And I was like, "Oh my God." And there's my husband, he knows the whole thing. He's already getting the bubble wrap ready and the saran wrap and everything. And we're wrapping up these pots, and I'm standing there totaling up, and I'm like, "Oh my God, do I really tell him what the total is?" This is an outrageous number. Excuse me. So I told him what it was, and he writes me out this check. And these people are like, "Wait, we were going to buy that." He goes, "Well, I gave you till 3 o'clock to buy her work."
That's so crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And, I think the fact that, because, like we said at the beginning that, all of us out here, we do know some artists that participate at places like SWAIA and Herd. And, some of the stories that I've heard, I know that some of the artists pull around $20,000 at some of these markets.
Yeah.
And, that's the equivalent to almost a full year's salary for a lot of people out here. And so, for somebody like me, it just blows my mind that, a person, an artist, could make that much at some of these Indian markets and, to the lengths that they go to, because I do have a friend who told me one time that when he travels to these big Indian markets, that when they get their hotel rooms, that he gets a separate room away from his family. That way, in that separate room is when he does finishing touches on some of the art pieces that, if he wasn't able to complete things by the time that they are ready to show their artwork.
I mean, yeah, it is actually up to the last minute that artists are trying to make ends meet and make that money there. And with that whole money part there, Karen, do you feel that you're exploiting the Hopi culture, Hopi or Tewa culture, through your pottery by just selling it at like such a ridiculous price?
This is Carl's favorite question, Karen.
No, I don't, because I look at, I started at the bottom rung of the ladder. Because I didn't have a stepping stone. You've got families that were Nampayos that they can sign their name with Nampayo, and hey, they come from a potter's family, and I didn't have that. So I started from the bottom. And it's funny you should say that, because my husband and I get a big kick out of that, because I had a big pot. And we sold it, I think, at Indian Market the first year for like $450. And I think my first year at Indian Market, I made like $4,000 in the Saturday and Sunday.
Oh, wow.
And I was so proud of myself, like, oh my God, I've never made this kind of money. And then when I came back from Indian Market and seeing all that and the amount of money, you guys are right. My friend who did win the best of show, I believe she sold her piece for almost $50,000.
Wow. I wonder how much my finger painting will get.
And then on top of that, her award money.
That's so crazy. And so Karen, I know you touched on it a little bit, but can you kind of tell us, I guess, because I guess in my mind, I think that all artists are perfectionists to a degree, because, you have so much pride in the work that you do, especially if you're going to sell at like an Indian market, understanding that some of these buyers really do look for that real quality of work. Can you talk to that degree a little bit about how much time and effort you put into a piece to ensure that it's as as perfect as possible, because then, you know, sometimes being around artists, you see something that they create and you think that, oh, wow, that's so cool. That's such a beautiful piece. But then yet they're unhappy with it for some reason. And then, you know, a lot of it is detail that only they can see.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they're so immersed in that type of thing. So can you talk to that to a degree?
I think a lot of it is pride in your work. Once you find out where you actually stand in the art world, I think I do know where I stand in the art world. You can't go backwards. You have to put out that quality art. And for myself, you know, I get so pissed off at myself because I'll be standing on my pot and I'll be saying, man, it really feels heavy, you know, and you don't sell your pots by the pound either.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll be trying to sand off and I'll be damned if I go right through it and there's a hole and you just go on to the next one.
Huh. Wow.
Because I want my pottery to be a certain weight and a certain thinness on it, and where there's no, I just want it perfect in my mind.
So like with that whole idea of perfection and everything like that, is that the reason why you became this huge artist now that you're being recognized for?
I think I became a good potter because I was put in a position that I never thought I would be in, taking care of my siblings and knowing that our parents were no longer around.
Okay, so it has to deal with the family side of everything, and I think that most artists they feel that if they need to take care of their families or take care of their loved ones, then yes, art has become a medium for money making here on the reservation. And with your story, you know, it does take that. It does take into consideration that, yes, you know, Hopis do need funds and do need money to survive on the outside world. And yes, we do have a certain skill that we can display for the world to see. And so, you know, I appreciate artists that do that for a good reason.
Mm-hmm. And you know how we were talking about, like, you know, I attend 2 shows. A lot of my pots don't even leave the res.
Really?
I do a lot of them for people at home, you know, for like their picky bowls.
Oh, wow.
I do go in with the basket dancers at Palaka. So, of course, I'm going to make me a nice big one to dance so my nephews have some nice pots. and you know, and it's just something that, and then like if my, you know, relatives are going to throw at a different village, you know, clan-wise, my nieces or somebody, I'll make them the pots to throw.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And you know,
and
even like your wife, Wendy, we had a conversation and she was asking me, and I'm like, you know, she goes, I'll go ahead and start saving. I said, you know what, Wendy, you're my family. You and I just see so much in her, like, we do so much that is similar. So I was telling her, you know what? I consider you my family.
Wow.
I'm not going to charge you. I said, because I know what you're going to get ready for, and I can't do that to you.
I thank you. Thank you so much for that, Karen.
I charge my family like up the yin yang. So
he charges his family.
I charge my soul. So
that. And the only thing I don't really want to make, and I don't like to make, but I will once in a while, are the pipes.
Oh,
because I do know they are important, and you just can't sit down and say, today I'm molding pipes, you know, give me a ball of clay. Because I myself come from the Kachina Parrot clan, and those are my Wutiyas, and I know we use the pipes for a lot of that stuff. And it's just that I know how important they are, and it's nothing to make just for fun.
Definitely. And Karen, we're running out of time, but if I could ask another question before we do run out of time. You did make a comment about saying that, you know, you know what your place is amongst the other artists, and, you know, that's something that we didn't really get a chance to talk too much in depth, but the art community, I guess. Can you talk about, you know, what that's like being a part of that community, what some of the camaraderies are, and are there like defenses in place for artists in terms of things like plagiarism? Because I think that that's a big thing amongst artists, is that they really want to protect the integrity of their work, of their originality. So if you could talk to that to an extent.
Well, I look at people that start doing pottery, and if they do something similar to what I do, at the beginning it used to bother me a lot. Like, oh my God, there they go copying me. But from the McGee brothers in Keene, they were a big influence in me getting going because they knew I could do it, and they're the ones that convinced me to keep doing it. And actually, Bruce McGee, who works at Heard Museum now, he's the one that told me, Karen, he goes, don't take it offensive if somebody wants to copy some of your work. He says, because they admire what you're doing. And you take it as a compliment. And the other thing is, it'll never be an original Karen Abeita. That is their work, and your work is your own style.
That's a good perspective to have.
Yeah. So,
and I don't ever compare myself to anybody because we're not the same. We all do things different. I don't know. I look at my work as it has to come from the heart, and you have to put your heart and mind into it.
Perfect.
And I love my work with a passion, to tell you guys the truth. I love what I do.
Perfect. And before we go, do you have any last words to say to our listeners out there who are trying to become artists like yourself? And do you have any, advice to them?
Yeah. Just do the best that you can. Jump out of the box. You can get out of that box and create. Don't ever tell yourself you can't, like I used to tell myself. That is not part of my vocabulary anymore, or I won't. Anything is possible if you put your heart and mind to things and set them goals. And once you accomplish that goal, set another one that seems untouchable. Because, like I said, anything is possible with hard work, dedication, and the love for what you do. You can get yourself there too.
Well, thank you again. Thank you for joining Carl and J-Man here, and just talking about your side of the how Indian markets are, and how hard it is for artists out there to create art like that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Thank you, Karen, so much for joining us today. And, we'd like to thank all our listeners for tuning in for this episode. And so, like we've been saying before, if you're not following us on social media, you can find us on Facebook at Carl and J-Man. You can find us on Instagram at Carl and J-Man _podcast. And you can find us on Twitter at Carl and J-Man.
Oh, yeah. And if you want to donate to us, go to anchor.fm/CJ-podcast85 to become a monthly sponsor and to keep our podcast alive. Or if you want to just donate a single $1, go to buymeacoffee.com/CJ-podcast and donate from there.
And we greatly thank every single one of you, our 30-pack contributors that have been giving to us monthly, all of you that have been buying us coffee, because I can honestly say that not a single cent of that money that's been donated has gone to either my or your pockets.
Oh, exactly.
But it's definitely gone into help building the podcast, to help building us be these guys, and to help us expand. So thank you, everyone that's contributed to us in that way. Thank you to our sponsors.
And we do have T-shirts that will be available.
T-shirts will be available soon. If you follow us on Instagram, you've seen those 2 different designs that we got. We got the Soos Boy shirts over there that are going to be on sale, and then the classic J-Man shirts going on sale pretty soon.
All right. Well, thank you again for listening to Carl and J-Man Save the World podcast. My name is Carl, and this is my best friend, J-Man.
So long. Good question.